There's been a lot of talk of things being two-tier this year, particularly with two-tier Keir, and if I'm not careful, this is going to turn into a rhyme fest, which wasn't intentional. But I've got a fantastic example, which if you blinked, you missed it, which started with Keir Starmer, but he had somebody else stand in for him to make up the answer, which makes his answer to it two-tier. And it's absolutely plain as day, but if you blinked, you missed it, so I'm going to spell it out for you in this video, because you deserve to hear it. But first of all, if you're new to me, I'm Daniel Shensmith, a barrister of England and Wales. I really enjoy helping you to understand law and talking about news and events and politics and things like that, which do have an impact on all of your lives. I will say things that the media won't, and I'll say it in ways that the media won't, and I depend on you for my following here, and I'm grateful to you for that. Let's take a look at what I'm talking about here, because this was in respect, if you remember, of I've now changed the title of this previous video to be more specific. You see, with YouTube videos, if you're absolutely specific about the video in the title at first, nobody watches it. So I change it later on, and then it's more descriptive later on. So a UK MP calls for blasphemy laws, and Starmer appeared to support it. So to spell out exactly what happened here, with Tahir Ali originally making that call in Parliament for a blasphemy law, what would ultimately amount to a blasphemy law. Let's have a reminder of that, then we'll look at Keir Starmer's response, and then we're going to have a look at another question that's been put up, which actually there's a very different response to. Let's listen to this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. November marks Islamophobia Awareness Month. Last year, the United Nations Human Rights Council adopted a resolution condemning the desecration of religious texts, including the Quran, despite opposition from the previous government. Acts of such mindless desecration only serve to fuel division and hatred within our society. Will the Prime Minister commit to introducing measures to prohibit the desecration of all religious texts and the prophets of the Abrahamic religions?
So that was the question, which ultimately, if the answer to that was yes, then that would ultimately amount to some sort of blasphemy law. Now you can see from this video that I'm showing you here of mine, which I'll link in the description below, some 17 minutes long. I dissect that language word by word and phrase by phrase. And it's absolutely clear that if acted on, that would amount to a blasphemy law, because desecration can just amount to disrespect, whether that's about religious books, whether it's about the prophets, figureheads, and so on. Obviously, it can amount to physical desecration, burning of things, and so on, which I don't support, but at the same time, I don't think should be criminalized either. So there are multiple views and different points of view on this. My point of view doesn't really matter. I'm just telling you what the law says. But here's Keir Starmer's response to that. Now, just to outline that again, a blasphemy law in the UK would absolutely be an infringement of free speech. And so to criminalize something that otherwise is freedom of speech is plainly wrong in a democratic society. So one would expect Keir Starmer to have responded to say, well, you know, of course we don't condone the behaviour, but we won't be criminalising it. That's what we might have expected him to say. He didn't. This is what he said, as a reminder.
Can I agree with him that desecration is awful and I think should be condemned across the House? We are, as I said before, Mr. Speaker, committed to tackling all forms of hatred and division, including, of course, Islamophobia in all of its forms. Thank you.
And that was it. That was his response. And so just to clarify here, before I move on to the subsequent response where this was brought up again in Parliament, following the Prime Minister's questions, this was another question in Parliament. I'll come back to you in just a second, but just to clarify, some people might think desecration is only limited to burning things, for example, which I think is wrong. I don't think people should do that. But at the same time, I don't think that should be criminalised, because whilst it might be wrong in a lot of people's view, those same people that hold those views may not think that it should be criminalised. One thing people often confuse when I say things, they think that it's my view because I'm perhaps defending somebody for doing something or saying something or having a belief about something or whatever, and I'm defending that person. A lot of people then impart that view and belief to me, and they think that I'm wrong for holding that view and sort of propagating that idea. That's not really the case. That's not what we do. We, as advocates, as barristers, and solicitors for that matter, we advocate and we fight for a particular person's perspective, their right to do certain things, up to the point where they are criminalized and they are wrong. And even when certain things are criminalized, we may fight against the criminalization of those things. But if they are criminal, obviously, then we fight for, why their actions were not criminal, etc., etc. So just telling you these things does not mean that I wholeheartedly agree and believe them. So if I say this should not be a criminal act and this should not be wrong and outlawed, it doesn't mean I agree with the act. I'm just telling you this is the way that things are. In a democratic society, we should not be making these things a criminal offence. With all that out of the way, this was where it was brought up once again, this idea of blasphemy laws coming about. This was from the channel, I was alerted to this, so all credit where it's due, to the Parliamentarian channel here. I'll link this video in the description below. Obviously, this was taken from live feeds somewhere. But this was the subsequent response in respect of this prospective blasphemy law because Keir Starmer did not rule it out. Listen to this. This is why, coming back to the very beginning, this is why it's two-tier. And two-tier Keir, if you like. Listen to this.
Mr Speaker, I was astonished that the vacillating Prime Minister did not take the opportunity to rule out definitively blasphemy laws in this country. They have no place in modern British society. This is the land of Monty Python and the life of Brian after all. Will the Minister take the opportunity to do what the Prime Minister would not and rule out completely any opportunity to introduce blasphemy laws?
Yes.
And that was it. That was the response. Yes. Now, that is obviously a stark contradiction to what Keir Starmer said when this was first brought up. Now, not only did he not rule out blasphemy laws, he did not say that we're a democratic society and we won't be outlawing these things, we won't be criminalising these things, etc. Not only that, he said that it should be condemned across the House and that they... Well, let's listen to it again. Let's remind ourselves.
Can I agree with him that desecration is awful and I think should be condemned across the House? We are, as I said before, Mr Speaker, committed to tackling all forms of hatred and division, including, of course, Islamophobia in all of its forms.
And so you could leave that with the view that he is committed to setting up a blasphemy law, which, in my view, would be wrong. As I've said, for all the reasons I've said, I don't agree with lots of different acts and I wouldn't do those things myself, but it should not be something that is criminalised. But the reason this is two-tier is you can see from his long-winded response there, and he thinks the whole House should agree with his view and ostensibly what he's proposing to do here. But the response over here to the same question is a simple one-word answer, yes. So the only response that they could absolutely muster in response to this further challenge on blasphemy laws was the word yes.
Take the opportunity to rule out definitively blasphemy laws in this country. They have no place in modern British society. This is the land of Monty Python and the life of Brian after all. Will the Minister take the opportunity to do what the Prime Minister would not and rule out completely any opportunity to introduce blasphemy laws?
Yes.
So now there should be no going back from that. The question was, will he take the opportunity, or will this minister take the opportunity where Keir Starmer did not, to rule out completely any idea of blasphemy laws? And the only answer was yes. It wasn't a qualified answer. It wasn't an answer that said, well, we should all condemn these things and we might look at it and we might be careful how we do it. None of those things. It was a simple answer of yes. They will take the opportunity to rule out any idea of blasphemy laws being implemented in this country. But as we all know, Labour has very often said one thing and done another. Countless examples of that over the last months and years. Countless examples of saying one thing and doing another. But just in case they end up doing something like this, I'm putting this forward, you can come back here and you can see that this was the definitively ruling out any form of blasphemy law. Definitively ruled it out. Let me know what you think about that in the comments below. Please do remember to like the video and share this with somebody that you think probably missed it, because I think a lot of people will have missed this. Because it was, in my view, deliberately short. It was probably through gritted teeth. And the only thing that they were prepared to do and say in response to that challenge, yes, they would take the opportunity to rule it out. So share this video with somebody that you think might have missed it. Remember to subscribe. About half of you don't. I'd really appreciate it if you do. And as always, thank you for watching.